at the glittering Skyline restaurant. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Investors, politicians, and high society elites filled the long mahogany table. But the atmosphere felt oddly cold. At the head sat Hana Takahashi, a young female, billionaire CEO who had just expanded her tech empire into the United States. Her company was revolutionary, her presence commanding, but tonight, something was off. She spoke with confidence, her voice steady, but she chose Japanese for her words. She refused to switch to English, even when the interpreters leaned in to whisper translations. Most of the men in suits grew restless, exchanging side glances, half smirks, and impatient sighs. "Why doesn't she just speak English?" one whispered. "Arrogant, isn't it?" muttered another, showing off. Even her translator seemed nervous, stumbling over words, failing to capture her tone. The rhythm of Hana's speech, elegant, precise, was being reduced to clumsy fragments. To the room, she looked isolated, misunderstood. Then, at the far end of the table, a man who didn't belong in the usual circles put down his fork. A single dad. Daniel Brooks had been invited only because he'd once saved the life of one of the investors during a freak accident. He had no fortune, no tailored suit, no seat among power players. He was just a father raising his little girl. But tonight, as he listened, his brow furrowed, and then he spoke. Imperfect, fluent Japanese. 皆さん、彼女はおごっているのではありません。彼女は敬意を払っているのです。Ladies and gentlemen, she is not being arrogant. She is showing respect. The table froze, forks clinked, heads turned. Daniel's voice was calm but firm as he continued translating, not word for word, but conveying Hana's true meaning, her intent. He explained how in Japanese culture, using her native language in such a high-stakes setting was not pride, but vulnerability and effort to communicate her heart with honesty. She was speaking about partnership, trust, and vision. Suddenly, the investors' dismissive faces shifted. They leaned forward, listening closely as Daniel gave Hana's words the strength they deserved. For the first time all evening, the room felt united. Hana's sharp eyes softened as she studied Daniel. No one else had bothered to truly hear her. But this man, a single dad from a modest background, had bridged the gap. When the dinner ended, the elites whispered about new deals and alliances. But Hana walked past them all, stopping only in front of Daniel. "You spoke my heart," she said quietly in Japanese, her gaze holding his. "How do you know my language so well?" Daniel smiled, a little sheepish. "My late wife, she was Japanese. She taught me everything: words, culture, respect." He paused, his voice lowering. "She made me promise I'd never forget." For the first time that night, Hana didn't look like the untouchable billionaire CEO. She looked human. A flicker of understanding, even admiration, crossed her face. And as the glittering city lights burned outside, everyone else finally saw her too, not as a foreign billionaire, not as an outsider, but as a woman with vision, because one single dad chose to listen. The dinner ended with polite applause, but Hana barely heard it. Her mind was replaying Daniel's words, the way he spoke Japanese with quiet confidence. It wasn't just his fluency, was the sincerity behind it. As the guests trickled out, Daniel tried to slip away too, but Hana caught his arm. "Wait." He turned, surprised. She wasn't the untouchable CEO. Now her eyes held warmth, curiosity. "Most people here only pretend to listen to me," she said softly in Japanese. "You actually heard me." Daniel hesitated. "Most people only listen for what they want to hear. My wife taught me that true listening means carrying the weight of another person's soul." Hana's breath caught. She wanted to ask more about his wife, but the sadness in his eyes stopped her. Instead, she simply nodded. "Tomorrow," she said, switching to English for the first time all evening, "come to my office. Noon. I'd like to continue this conversation." The next day, Daniel stood outside Takahashi Tech's sleek glass skyscraper with his daughter Emma, clutching his hand. He couldn't find a babysitter, so she came along, clutching her stuffed rabbit like it was a shield. Hannah's secretary nearly turned them away, until Hannah herself appeared. To Daniel's surprise, her face lit up at the sight of Emma. "You brought your daughter?" Hannah said, kneeling slightly so she was on the girl's level. "What's her name?" "Emma," Daniel replied. Emma hid behind his leg, but Hannah smiled gently. "Emma, a beautiful name. You must be very brave, having a father who listens so well." Emma peeked out, curiosity overcoming shyness. Daniel watched as Hannah, the billionaire feared in boardrooms, melted into warmth before a little girl. Over lunch in Hannah's private lounge, Daniel explained his past. His wife Aiko had been a translator at international summits. She believed in bridging cultures, just like Hannah did. When she passed away suddenly, Daniel devoted himself to raising Emma. He worked long hours, yet always kept the traditions Aiko taught him alive, cooking Japanese meals, teaching Emma phrases, lighting incense on her birthday. Hannah listened intently, her usually sharp posture softening. "You carry her memory beautifully," she whispered. "Most people run from grief. You built a home out of it." Daniel shrugged. "It's the only way I knew how to honor her." For a moment, silence hung between them. But it wasn't heavy, it was shared understanding. Weeks turned into months. Hannah found excuses to involve Daniel in her world, inviting him to cultural events, letting Emma visit her office where she kept toys in a drawer just for her. In return, Daniel showed Hannah his world, taking her to local diners, introducing her to neighbors who saw her not as a billionaire, but as a woman trying to belong. The bond deepened quietly, naturally. Hannah admired his humility, his strength. As a father, Daniel admired her discipline, her vulnerability, hidden behind a steel mask. Emma, without meaning to, became the bridge between them, her laughter softening Hannah's heart in ways she hadn't expected. One evening, after a charity gala, Hannah walked with Daniel onto the balcony, the city lights glittering below. "You know," she said, switching back to Japanese, "everyone warned me not to trust anyone here. They said America would eat me alive. But when you spoke my words that night, I felt seen for the first time." Daniel met her gaze. "And when you listened to me, really listened, I didn't feel like just some single dad struggling to get by. You made me feel enough." For the first time, the untouchable CEO and the ordinary man leaned closer, not because of status, not because of power, but because of the rare gift they had given each other: understanding.